Evening, gentlemen. This match has been years in the making. In the 1920s, Alekhine was the undisputed world number 2, and Capablanca obviously the world champion. However, Capablanca often demanded hefty appearance fees to appear in the same tournament as Alekhine, and of course, there was a financial requirement to organize the World Championship match. So after some 6 or 7 years of toiling, Alekhine has finally created a name for himself and generated enough financial support that this match could get organized in Buenos Aires in November 1927. Now, before 1927, Alekhine had in fact never beaten Capablanca in a standard game. So his win here truly shocked the chess world, much like Kramnik's win over Kasparov in 2002. In fact, Alekhine himself later admitted, but only after Capablanca's death, that he didn't feel like he was the better player in 1927.
Jumping into the very first game of the championship match, we have ourselves on board a delayed exchange French variation. Alekhine's style, of course, was to seize the initiative and create tactical complications, so it was natural for him to go for the French winnower. Capablanca, however, was more known for playing the endgame exceptionally well, so he steers the game towards a simpler position. The so-called delayed exchange variation, where the insertion of these two moves probably slightly favors white, since black may prefer to have the bishop on d6, but it's certainly not a huge factor at this point. Now Capablanca opts for a rather ideal attacking setup here, bishop d3 at knight e2, simply avoiding any trouble with the bishop pinning his knight. But this variation isn't seen too often nowadays because it's generally believed to give black fairly easy equality. Capablanca was very happy with a safe position, trying to outplay people over the long run. So Alekhine decides to quickly neutralize the white bishop with bishop f5 here, and generally has few problems here. Capablanca opted for queen d3. An interesting try from white to gain an advantage, which has been seen recently, is knight f4. And a fun stockfish suggestion after knight c7 is knight h5, trying to disturb black, who can meet queen g4 with g6. And after, for example, knight e2, could play f6 to consolidate control over this f6 square and free up space for himself. And this appears to be fine for black.
Right, and after queen d7, black achieves equality. And white plays quite meekly here with this knight d1, knight e3 plan. Instead of playing knight e3 straight away, more purposeful from the world champion would have been c3, so the bishop drops back, queen h3, with some pressure here and some more active play for white. Instead, knight e3 with the plan of trading pieces is just quite passive. Knights are exchanged, and black continues to make logical developing moves. Knight f4 is played, and after bishop d6, rook fe1, Alekhine seizes the initiative with knight b4. Queen is kicked to b3, and now queen f5 with concrete threats. Now this move highlights just how unprepared Capablanca was for this game, both mentally and physically, as numerous pundits argued, and even Kasparov in his book, My Great Predecessors. So knight d3 would have been a better defense, as we'll see after knight d3 in an exchange of horses, b6 holding onto the b pawn, and here white is only slightly worse, because this weak pawn is better than no pawn. Right, now rook ac1 is not only a somewhat passive move, it also fails tactically in view of the beautiful knight takes c2. And after rook takes, you can just take on f4 here in view of this pin.
Now queen takes f4 is good since it forces a weakening out of white's kingside, which is generally a good idea since black is aiming to fix some targets that he can later attack. Now queen f5, keeping an eye on this rook to prevent white from stealing b7. So Capablanca doubles on the e file. b6, queen b5 is of course quick to start creeping on all of black's weakened light squares. So Alekhine starts trying to loosen up white's kingside slightly, forcing out h4, which he can be happy with since this g3 point is now more susceptible to attack. A rook e4 is a deceptively simple position. This is a rather poisonous move, threatening both to take on h4 and to double up on the e file. For example, a3, rook h4, and recapturing is not possible due to a quick checkmate. So that is why it is necessary for white to move his bishop to try and distract black and wrest control of the e-file. In fact, any bishop move works, but Capablanca opted for bishop d2. After rook takes d4, he has tossed a pawn, but at least his pieces have become very active. Now the power of the e-file can be seen in the fact that rook takes h4 simply drops a rook, since after rook e8, white has created an escape square for his king via e2, and he is no longer checkmated.
So here Alekhine has two candidate moves for the cannon. You can either play cannon d3, which he did in the game, or he can play it to g4. We'll see that playing it on g4 is actually somewhat better, because after rook g4, we're keeping control of this fourth rank, and this means that after bishop b5 we get to play bishop c4. Now b4 is not an idea, so play would continue, king g2, rook c8 taking the time to defend the c pawn, and f3, which is probably forced in the long run here. And after rook g6, queen a4, we'll see that here black has immense pressure against white's king. Now as mentioned in the game, Alekhine opts for rook d3, and this allows a trade of the long-range snipers. After rook takes d6, rook e5, queen f3, see that black still has pretty significant pressure on white's king, but considerably less than in the rook g4 line. This also has the drawback of allowing rook takes h5, and this pretty hilarious tactic of queen takes, this check, and queen takes d3 check. Here Alekhine offers a queen trade.
Now an affection for endgame is not enough to counterbalance a pawn deficit, so Capablanca must move his queen. Probably the best square was queen f3, which allows the struggle to go on, since after c6, white is able to generate some counterplay to distract black from simply queening his d pawn. So after king g2 and rook f6, we reach this situation where white has a firm grip of the e-file. Instead, queen d1 was selected, but this has the disadvantage of conceding the e-file. Since white cannot really allow further simplification, he crept off right to this corner. After rook e5, he's managed to steal back a rook pawn. This doesn't alleviate his sufferings all that much.
In this position we can see that while Capablanca has recovered his pawn deficit, his position is close to hopeless. Black has complete control over the center, his king is far safer, and he has some sort of an attack brewing, whereas this rook is pretty much out of play. And at this point Capablanca, succumbing to the pressure, plays rook d7, essentially committing suicide. A better try would have been queen f3, and after rook f5, queen d3, d4, and queen e4, black is clearly still a lot better, but in this variation, white is going to have the e-file, and it's going to be a lot harder for black to convert. So the problem with rook d7 is that it gives up all hope of controlling the only active file, and with tempo no less. So after queen e6, this forces queen d3 check, otherwise either the queen or the rook is lost. After g6 and rook d8, d4, we can see that this is similar to the other variation. However, here white's rook is completely out of play, and black has complete control of the e-file. So a4 is tried. However, after rook e1, king g2, and queen c6 check, f3 is forced.
At this point, black has a very easy plan to victory, consisting of mixing threats of promoting his d-pawn and attacking the white king, which is now critically exposed, and his extra space makes it much more easy for him to mix threats, while white will struggle to marshal his forces correctly. He can start by slapping his cannon in white's face, who must keep an eye on the f3 pawn. After queen e6, although more clinical, would have been queen f6. And after rook f8, which is a fun try suggested by Stockfish, just to keep an eye on this f-pawn. d3, queen f1 and rook e2 forces a quick resignation. However, queen e6 is also sufficient, after which g4 was tried. Rook e2 check, and more penetration from black. White is really struggling to make moves at this point. He came up with queen h1, and after queen f4 tried one more move before resigning in this position. A possible ending to this game would have been h takes g6, king g7, not really caring too much about this and trying to dodge further checks, since rook takes f3 is very strong here. And this is an example mate, although white can give up his queen if he wants to prolong his suffering. So Capablanca was understandably not yet ready to abandon this first game in the World Championship, so he played on for a few more moves, but black is able to inexorably make progress here. H2, H3, and further penetration. White is relegated to making passive moves along his back rank, and after one further move, that was enough.
Wow, so that wraps it up for Alekhine's first ever win over Capablanca, and what a time to do it. As I mentioned in the video, Alekhine was far better prepared for this match, and this really shows in the vigour of his play, both in this game and in the ensuing games of this match. I hope you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and happy clowning.